There's a quiet kind of self-worth that comes from replacing things that make you feel small. And I don't mean this in a big, expensive, crazy way. I truly mean the little things. Tiny details that make you feel small or make you feel less worthy on the day to day, and you don't realize that it's even happening. The mug you drink from, the pen that is running out of ink, and so you keep like shaking it so that it writes again, those kinds of things. And yes, it can also be bigger things. But today I want to talk about the fact that most of us are actually missing these things. And when we start paying attention to them, when we start to shift these things one thing at a time, well, let's just say amazing things can happen. If we haven't met yet, my name is Isabel, and on this channel, we talk all about embracing your weird in order to build a better brand, business, and life. When we start to make these shifts, something inside us starts to shift as well. There's a concept I learned a few years ago when I was reading a book called Get Rich, Lucky Bitch by Denise Duffield-Thomas. And in it, she talks about incremental upgrades. Now, this concept changed how I moved through the world, even though it's simple, quiet, and honestly kind of unglamorous, right? When we think about makeovers, when we think about up-leveling our lives, when we think about, getting to our ideal life, the image that comes to mind is like those before and afters where there's this really dramatic change. But honestly, when Denise talks about incremental upgrades, she's not talking about that kind of before and after. And even though it seems small, it changed the way I approach comfort. It changed the way I approach money. It changed the way I take care of myself even. And so that's what I want to talk to you about. The concept of incremental upgrades, how they work, why we resist them, and why these small shifts can actually have way bigger impact than you think they can have. So what is this about incremental upgrades? Well, Denise Duffield-Thomas explains it as getting rid of the things that cause any sort of friction in your life, right? And she talks about changing your pillowcase or buying a new pen or buying a new mug or changing your water bottle. And then she starts talking about bigger things as well. However, she recommends starting with these little everyday annoyances because this is what starts shifting our relationship with value and worth and self-worth and money mindset. But also, these changes seem so small that your brain won't resist them, right? When we think about buying this huge thing that's really expensive that we're not sure if we can afford, our brain is giving us all sorts of reasons why we shouldn't. Whereas when we think about buying a new $5 pen, it's not that big of a deal, right? At first, when I read this concept, I didn't really get it, right? It felt kind of superficial, I guess. It felt like it wouldn't really change anything. It felt like it was just a fun little to-do in the chapter of a book, right? However, I decided to try it because I'm very much a test it first and then see if it works for you. And if it doesn't, let it go. But if it does, hey, you might be surprised. And I started noticing how many little things in my life were annoying me, how many little things were slightly messy, slightly annoying. Like they weren't necessarily super broken. They weren't necessarily urgent things that I needed to fix, but they were quietly draining. They were slowly taking energy out of my day every single day. And when I started changing these things one at a time, I started feeling a little different. Not like this magical overnight change, oh my God, my life is new, but that feels better. I have a little more energy. This pen is really nice to write with, which honestly is enough. We've talked a little about this in a recent video where I talked about not tolerating or settling for things that are really bothering you in your life, things that are broken, things that are useless. But the incremental upgrade takes this one step further, because it's not just about getting settled or fixing the things that are broken in your life so that you build an okay life. It's about taking one step closer, or getting yourself one step closer to your ideal life, to your dream life. One thing that I've seen a lot is when we're stuck in our current life, which let's say is a low level, our lowest level, or our low level of life, right? And we want to reach the highest level. Just to come up with an example, let's say you're living in a small studio apartment and your dream is to live on like a 10-acre piece of land that has a huge house on it with like 5 bedrooms and something like that. Because we can't jump, we don't see a way to jump from our lowest level to our highest level, we decide to stay at our lowest level. However, maybe you can't get out of that studio apartment and into this 10-acre plot of land right now, but maybe you can move into a 2-bedroom apartment, and that's something that you could afford right now, and that is something that would make your life better right now. That is what the incremental upgrade is about. It's about not seeing the final destination that you dream of and being like, yeah, I can't get there. But about realizing that between this level and this level, there's middle steps. And not just one middle step, but like multiple middle steps, right? A smaller example of this could be like, let's say your whole life you've dreamed of having like I don't even know how much these cost, like $1,000 Mont Blanc pen or something like that. But you're still using, like that's your highest level, but right now you're still using that pen that you got at a motel 5 years ago that's running out of ink, and you've already lost the cap and you've bitten on the end and it barely writes, but that's the one you're using. There's multiple middle steps to that Mont Blanc pen, right? You can go out and buy a new pen, and it doesn't have to be an expensive pen. You can get one at the dollar store, but at least it's not one that's running out of ink. At least it's one that, if it has a cap, has the cap. It's one that you haven't chewed on. It's one that your dog hasn't chewed on, whatever it is, right? And then later you can buy, I don't know, a $10 pen that writes better. I don't know anything about pens, but you get the idea, right? And you work your way up to the highest level. Because we can't access the highest level of our ideal life in a specific area, that doesn't mean that we have to stay at our current level. It just means we need to find what middle step we can actually attain right now. This is really, really common, especially amongst folks who are used to getting by with less, or who are used to being really resourceful and like using up their resources the best they can. We kind of convince ourselves that if we can't get here, right, we should just make do with what we've already got. But the truth is that there is middle steps, like I just said, right? And these steps are what can get you closer to your ideal faster, which I'll explain in a bit. What we need to do is identify the step that makes you feel better now. The step that doesn't require a dream budget, but still offers a little bit more ease, a little bit more comfort, a little bit more relief, a little bit more beauty, whatever is important to you. Other examples I've heard from people are people who would love to have a custom wardrobe and hire a personal stylist and but because they can't get there yet, they're still holding on to clothes from 15 years ago that don't fit. And they refuse to buy like a single article of clothing because they're like, this is what I want. But you can get a new article of clothing that fits you great and makes you feel great. You can also, if you don't have the money to buy new clothes right now, you can also declutter those clothes that you're not wearing to make space for the new clothes when they do come. Another example that I see that comes up a lot, especially in business, is people who dream of having a big team. And so they dream of having like a copywriter and a designer on their team and someone who does sales and marketing and someone who runs their customer service. They dream of this big team, yet they are not willing to outsource a single task that they dread doing themselves. It's this all or nothing mindset. It's mindset that if I can't have the huge team right away, I'm just going to do it all myself. Whereas you might not have the money to have a full-time VA, but you might be able to invest in having a person do one single task that you hate doing, right? Once a month, or twice a month, or once a week. So figuring out where you can start. Now, why is this important? The incremental upgrades are important because it makes these things your new normal, okay? You don't just get a better object or a better experience or a better whatever it is you did for yourself. You get a new baseline. And this is important for the brain, okay? So let's say you've never had a dishwasher and you move into a new place and this place has a dishwasher and you live there for 5 years and you love this dishwasher. And then you have to move out and find a new place. And in that new place, there is no dishwasher. You would sure as heck miss that dishwasher, wouldn't you? I mean, all of us would. I've never met a person who likes doing dishes. But if that's you, like, no judgment. Just like, if you want to come over and do mine, I would totally accept that. When we incrementally upgrade our lives, we start getting used to those new levels of living, okay? That's not your brain being picky. That is your brain adapting. It is actually called in psychology hedonic adaptation. And it's our tendency to adjust to new circumstances over time. Now, this is great for survival. It's a brain thing that allows you to survive in new environments. But it also means that when we start adding more ease and comfort into our lives, even in tiny ways, our nervous system adjusts and this new level becomes familiar. And then, thanks to another wonderful thing our brain does called neuroplasticity, your brain actually rewires itself around that. And you start thinking that this is normal. You start thinking differently. You start acting differently. And what does that allow you to do? It allows you to take it one step further. Because now this was your normal. Now this is your new normal. And so because this is now your new normal, now your brain can see this as a possibility. And if we take this one step further, your brain also has the RAS, or reticular activating system, which is the part of the brain that filters information. So if I show you a video and I'm like, I want you to only look for red cars, your brain is immediately going to filter out a lot of the stuff that's happening to focus on the red cars. The same thing happens with your new normal. When you see these things as normal, your brain can't focus on all the things and all the information that's thrown at you every day at the same time. So it focuses on certain tidbits. Now, when you adjust to something being your new normal, these things start getting filtered out, which allows new information, new possibilities, and new opportunities to be shown because they're not getting filtered out anymore. What felt far off before now is your baseline, which means you can now do another one. You stop asking, is this too much? And start asking, what else can I shift? Now, if this resonates with you and you want to experiment, I would look around and find just one thing. You don't need to make a list. I know that if you're like me, you're going to make a list, but you don't have to. Just find one thing that you know slightly annoys you, right? And find your next step. What would make this slightly better, right? An easy way to start is a pen. I know we all have pens that don't write well. It happens. They run out of ink and we don't replace them because it's like, it's not urgent. It's not important. Like, we can just kind of scratch it on a piece of scratch paper and then once it starts flowing ink again, use it to write. Anything, one small thing, pick it and decide and commit to upgrading it this week. If you want extra accountability, leave it in the comments. Let me know what you're going to upgrade this week. And yeah, just change that low vibe for something that is higher vibe. The whole point of this video, or what I want you to take away from it, is that these tiny upgrades, they add up, okay? They change how you move through the world, and they remind you, I matter, I'm allowed to make my life easier, I'm allowed to live better, and I don't have to earn it. I can just do it now because I am worthy. Now, we don't have to hustle our way into joy or into our ideal lives. We also don't need to overhaul our entire lives to feel better. I know that those huge before and after makeover things have been like seared into our brain because they're amazing. But for most of us, it has to be incremental. And you can either stay stuck looking at your ideal life from afar and thinking, why don't I have that? Or you can decide today to move into one of those middle steps that you can have now and slowly work your way up to that ideal. If you enjoyed this video, I make new content like this every single Friday. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps this channel grow. And yeah, until then, stay wild, stay weird, and I'll see you in the next one.